Hey, and welcome to this episode of Matched Betting Uncovered, brought to you by ProfitDuel. Today, we are undertaking a deep dive into, well, the absolute foundational element of building wealth with matched betting, the bankroll. For beginners, the whole concept of needing a chunk of cash just to start earning risk-free profits, it can be a bit confusing, right? But understanding the bankroll, or the float as some call it, that's really the key to unlocking maximum earnings velocity.
It truly is, yeah. The bankroll is basically your essential operating capital, and having a clear strategy for it. It's pretty much non-negotiable if you want to generate consistent, guaranteed monthly profits. So our mission in this deep dive is to demystify this capital. We're going beyond just the basic definition to explain the three core concepts of bankroll control. We'll look at the specific dollar amounts you might need for different strategies and show you exactly why that money is always returned to you.
Okay, perfect. So let's start right at the beginning then. If you've heard the term float or bankroll thrown around in this context, what exactly are we talking about? Like in simple terms.
Simply put, the bankroll is the initial cash you need up front. You need it to place two specific types of bets pretty much simultaneously. So you need enough cash to cover the qualifying bet, that's the bet you place with the bookmaker, to unlock a bonus.
Right.
And then the corresponding hedge bet, which you place on a betting exchange, backing the opposite outcome. It's essentially the upfront capital needed to cancel out the risk and qualify for that free bonus money.
Okay. And I think this is the moment where people often hesitate a bit. They see they might need, say, $100 or maybe even $500, and they think, hang on, I have to risk that cash just to get maybe a $25 bonus.
So,
But the absolute core insight here, the thing you really need to grasp, is that the bankroll itself is never actually at risk.
precisely. Yeah, we really need to move past thinking of this as risk capital.
Yeah.
Because the whole match betting process requires you to cover every possible outcome of an event. That initial bankroll is basically guaranteed to be returned to you. Now, it might come back from the bookmaker if your qualifying bet wins, or it might come back from the exchange if your hedge bet wins. But it always comes back, always. Maybe less a tiny calculated loss, which is just what you used to unlock the bonus in the first place.
So the real kind of fascinating takeaway isn't just that the money is safe, but that it becomes this constantly rotating high-velocity asset. Is that right?
That's the crucial mental shift you need to make. Absolutely. You aren't spending the money. You are, in effect, loaning it to the system temporarily just to unlock a bonus. Once the event settles, and that's often within hours or maybe a day, that capital is freed up. And it can go right back into the next promotion, compounding your earnings really quite quickly. Think of it not as money you're putting aside and can't touch, but as temporary capital that generates an immediate return for you.
Okay, right. Let's explore that rotation idea a bit further then. Let's look at the core features of managing this cash. If the first feature is zero risk, that the process itself protects your capital, what's the immediate consequence of that for the user? I mean, it sounds like control and accessibility must be huge for, peace of mind.
Oh, control is absolutely vital, yeah. And it's our second core feature. Your bankroll remains exclusively under your control, always. This isn't like some investment fund where someone else is managing it for you. No, the money resides in your own personal bank accounts, or maybe your primary e-wallets, or in the various bookmaker and exchange accounts that you set up yourself. Only you decide how it's deployed. You decide when to move it, where to move it, and which promotions you want to tackle. This full control is really essential for managing your own financial timeline.
Okay, but let me just play devil's advocate for a second. For the, maybe skeptical beginner listening right now. If I commit, let's say, $500 of my operating cash to this whole thing, how do I mentally handle seeing that money tied up in various bookmaker accounts for, I don't know, maybe 48 hours while I wait for a bet to settle? Doesn't that feel a bit restrictive?
That's a very fair concern. It really is. And it's precisely why understanding the velocity, the speed of it all, is so important. Well, yes, funds might be briefly tied up, that's true, but the moment the event is over, those funds are available again. Straight away, usually. Good management helps minimize this downtime, of course. And furthermore, the goal is really for the profit, which is genuinely new money you've generated, to cover that brief liquidity gap. As you grow, you should find you never really need to touch your personal savings again. You just recycle the profit you've already made.
Right, which leads us directly to the third feature, and you could argue it's maybe the most important one, scale for increased profits.
That's right. The relationship between your bankroll size and your potential profit. It's direct and it's powerful. A larger float, it dramatically accelerates your earnings potential because it allows you to capitalize on those bigger, more generous promotions that often require larger qualifying bets. Basically, you get access to the juiciest offers out there.
So it's not just about getting access to more profitable offers, is it? It sounds like it's also about time efficiency.
Exactly, that's a huge part of it. With a larger bankroll, you can carry out multiple matched betting opportunities simultaneously. You could be running 2 or 3 free bet conversions at the same time. This drastically improves your time to profit ratio, makes the whole thing much more efficient. Also, and this is worth noting, consistently placing higher value bets can sometimes open the door to sportsbook VIP programs. And those offer tailored, exclusive, and often highly lucrative reload bonuses.
Okay, so let's pivot now to the really practical question, the one everyone asks. I'm ready to start, I'm convinced. But how much cash do I actually need to begin seeing some results? What's the absolute floor, and what's maybe the sweet spot?
Well, you can technically start with almost nothing. That's true. We've seen people begin with as little as, say, $10 or $20.
Yeah.
But here's the reality check. Starting that low requires, frankly, tremendous patience. You're limited to tiny initial bets and very low odds, which means your capital builds up really, really slowly. If you want to see a noticeable impact fairly quickly, $10 just isn't going to cut it.
Okay. So for a beginner then, someone who wants to prove the concept works for them and start seeing some decent money come back relatively quickly, what's realistic?
We generally find that an initial bankroll of around $50 is where beginners start earning, let's say, decent profits and building some real momentum. That's usually enough to handle the smallest, easiest sign-up offers immediately, get you started. However, if you really want to fast-track your profit building and tackle the first few introductory offers without any stress, we highly recommend starting with $200 or perhaps a bit more.
Okay, why the jump to $200? What specific opportunities does that bigger buffer open up?
Well, the $200 buffer provides really necessary flexibility. It ensures you have enough capital sort of floating between the bookmaker and the exchange to handle offers that might require, say, a $100 initial outlay. Or maybe just to manage a temporary delay in funds clearing from one account to another. It happens sometimes. It basically removes the stress of feeling like you need funds to settle instantly before you can move on to the next offer. Gives you breathing room.
And what about if someone is really dedicated? They want to maximize that velocity you talked about right from day one, aiming for that optimal flexibility.
Right. If you are seeking ultimate flexibility and aiming to clear the maximum number of offers as quickly as possible, then the optimal starting range is probably somewhere between $500 and $800. This size bankroll allows you to instantly tackle even the most generous, no-sweat bet offers, where you might need $250 or even $500 of float just for a single qualifying bet. And it lets you manage several conversion opportunities all at once without the system ever feeling like it's running dry. Honestly, that $500, $800 bankroll, it's often the difference between earning maybe $500 in your first month and potentially earning $1,000. It scales that fast.
That strategy makes total sense. So you start with the easiest, lowest bankroll sign-up offers first. Systematically complete them, and then use the guaranteed profits you make from those to build up your capital base until you hit that, say, $500 optimal range. Okay. Now, let's move past the initial sign-up phase. What happens to your bankroll needs when you start focusing on the ongoing offers for existing users, the reloads, as they're called?
Yeah, the requirements definitely shift, often quite significantly.
Yeah.
And that's largely because the complexity of the offers themselves can increase. For general, sort of guaranteed profit reload offers things like simple price boosts or weekly qualifying bets. If you plan to dedicate maybe a few hours per week to those, then a comfortable bankroll of at least $500 should sustain that activity quite well. You're typically just recycling the same capital multiple times per week for those types of offers.
But then you get into the really advanced strategies, right? The ones which often carry higher profit margins, but also demand more capital and more management. Can you give us an example?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's consider some specialized, more complex strategies,
Yeah.
like the 2-up early payout offers, or maybe certain horse racing refund promotions. For the 2-up strategy, the bookmaker pays out your bet as a winner if your team goes 2 goals ahead at any point, regardless of the final score.
Oh.
Now, you typically need a larger float here, probably upwards of $1,000, because you're managing the initial liability on your bets. Plus the potential for a partial or full early payout, which then requires you to immediately adjust your hedge bet on the exchange. This needs pretty robust capital to handle those overlapping liabilities and potential mid-game volatility smoothly.
Okay, that makes the $1,000 plus requirement much clearer. It's not just for placing one single large bet. It's really for managing the consequences of a complex bet and having the immediate follow-up capital ready if needed. Makes sense. What about applying matched betting to casino offers? Those can sometimes involve higher variance, can't they?
They can, yes. Casino offers tend to operate on a slightly different mathematical principle. They often require a larger reserve just to account for the element of chance, even though they remain mathematically profitable over the long term. For the sort of beginner-level casino bonus bet offers, we find a minimum bankroll of around $200 is usually sufficient to handle the wagering requirements. However, for those people looking to target the really high-return, medium to high-risk casino offers, these often involve significant wagering volume to clear a bonus. For those, a significantly higher bankroll of $1,500 or even more is highly recommended. That level of capital is really necessary to withstand potential short-term variance or, swings in results, and still have enough liquidity left over to complete the required promotional turnover without running out of funds.
Okay, right. So we've covered the definition, the control factors, the specific sizing needed for different strategies. The last really critical piece of the puzzle is management itself, managing the bankroll. We know that manually tracking all those incoming and outgoing funds, calculating profits across multiple accounts, keeping track of deadlines, it can quickly turn into a real headache, can't it? Often relying on complicated spreadsheets.
Oh, management is absolutely non-negotiable for long-term profit growth. It really is. If you don't track every single penny accurately, you quickly lose transparency. You can't accurately calculate your true hourly rate of return. You can't easily spot mistakes. Look, many people start with a simple spreadsheet, and that's fine initially, perhaps. But as soon as you start running 5, 10, maybe more offers concurrently, manual tracking becomes a serious chore. It really bogs you down.
So there must be a better way, right? A way to ensure that transparency and scale effectively without needing like an accounting degree.
Exactly, there is. For sustained growth and efficiency, using an effective tool is pretty much essential. By utilizing something like a dedicated profit tracker, for example, you can instantly log every single transaction. No fuss. This type of tool saves enormous amounts of time and just eliminates confusion. It works by mapping your actual versus your expected profits weekly, monthly, yearly, making the whole bankroll management process simple, transparent, and scalable. Crucially, it shifts your focus back to finding and completing new offers, not getting stuck reconciling balances.
Okay, so what does this all mean for you, the listener, tuning in? We've established that the bankroll isn't really a cost. It's more like a constantly rotating, risk-free investment fund. We've laid out the groundwork for how that money works for you and the optimal size needed to really accelerate your profits. Now, that knowledge needs to translate into action, doesn't it? Starting right means having the confidence that the system, the platform, guides those first crucial steps, making sure you leverage your initial capital correctly from the get-go. We're confident in our platform, and we have a great welcome offer for new members. It gives you a trial period, and you can earn over $100 from the welcome offers alone. Plus, you get customer care guidance every step of the way.
Yeah, and perhaps as a final thought for you to consider as you move forward, just think about how much quicker you could potentially hit your financial goals. If you started managing your initial capital not just as spending money, but truly as a risk-free rotating investment fund, one that is constantly recycling, constantly growing your wealth, and allowing you to maximize every single profitable opportunity that comes your way.
That's a really powerful distinction to make. Food for thought. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.